Hello and welcome to the Mystic Cast, where you join me, Jack Stafford, a student of metaphysics, as I talk to a variety of guests to better understand the teachings given by the Masters through the Aetherius Society, the new cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, incorporating all yogas, Christian mysticism, theosophy, UFOs, and much, much more. Please note that this is an independent program, not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, my guest is the writer, Robin Maxwell. Hello, Robin.
Hi there. Nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Whereabouts are you in the world today?
I'm in Pioneer Town, California, which is here a place that more people have heard of than Pioneer Town, Joshua Tree. The
Okay.
park is. But we are about 4,300 feet in elevation at the foothills of the Big Bear Mountains, and it's glorious high desert. And just one of the prettiest places in the world, surrounded by mesas and boulder piles and the mountain range and just amazing vistas. And my husband Max Thomas and I live on a wildlife sanctuary that we've created right on the border of 33,000 acres of wildlands. So we got a lot of animals.
Well, you need to be as a writer, you need to be in an inspiring place.
Indeed. And funnily enough, we moved here in 2000, in fact, right before the millennium, weeks before the millennium. And the very first book that I wrote, because I'd written I had written two before. I'd only written my debut novel and the second one when we moved here in 2000. And I was so inspired by the beauty around me. Let me turn the sound off. The nature that was all around. I sort of fell in love with nature, and I ended up giving that as my main thrust of the character of Poseidon. He falls in love with Earth, and he falls in love with an Earth girl, and the story takes off from
But
there.
this is the reason we're talking today about your latest book, Atlantos.
Gods of Atlantis.
The Gods of Atlantis.
And the first book is called Poseidon in Love.
Why is it Atlantos, not Atlantis?
It's somehow to set it apart from all the other Atlantises, including the Atlantis Resort and the Atlantis space, the what do you call it? The space shuttle. And it also, because it's based on the writings of Plato, who was Greek, so many of Greek words end with OS rather than IS. And I think it just gives it a little extra question. People always say, why do you end it with OS? And there's so many books out there about Atlantis and so many everythings about Atlantis. I wanted this kind of stand out in its own.
That's a good enough reason. I mean, you're famous for researching, because you write historical fiction, shall we say?
Yeah.
But you always base it in. You do a lot of research.
Deep research. Yes. And
so
I always write about icons, from Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth I, the pirate and rebel, Grace O'Malley, Romeo and Juliet, Tarzan and Jane. Oh, I don't go for the little guy. And in this case, I had read Plato and his account of Atlantis, and while he doesn't talk volubly about the personal lives of the gods of Atlantis, without them, there is no story of Atlantis. And of course, Plato is the only one who ever wrote about Atlantis. Did you know that?
No, I never.
know that. Nobody else wrote about it. He wrote it, 2,500 years ago.
At that time, you mean, yeah.
Anytime. I mean, everything that has come down to us, every story that has come since then
Mm.
is just a riff on
I
what
think some theosophical teachings like Madame Blavatsky has.
No, but
They,
it was all from nobody would have known. She would not have known about Atlantis if she hadn't read Plato's two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. I promise you this is true.
okay. And so, is Poseidon mentioned in Plato?
Oh, well, that's the whole thing. So, yes, he talks a lot about the physical nature of the city of Atlantis and the continent of
This
Atlantis.
circular city that's at the heart of it.
Yes, right. However, the whole story starts, and I'm going to paraphrase, but Plato writes that Poseidon was given for his part. He was a god. He was considered a god. And I suppose all of the gods of the pantheon, of the Greek pantheon, were given something to rule over. Plato says Poseidon was given for his part the continent of Atlantis. And he fell in love and had intercourse with a woman named, he called her Cleito. I've changed her name a little because I thought that was not a nice sounding name. I call her Cleota. Fell in love and married this and this woman, and they had 10 sons, 5 sets of twin sons. Just those words, and he named the 10 sons. The firstborn was Atlas. Okay, another very famous name and icon. And then he goes on to discuss how the city was built and it rings and the plateau above it where they started agriculture and so I didn't have much to go on,
Doesn't
but
sound like it, yeah.
what you get, at least what I got out of it, because I'm always kind of extrapolating from the few facts that I sometimes am given. When I write about the 15th and 16th century, I have quite a bit more information to go on sometimes. In this case, I'm talking about 12,000 years ago. And Plato, in his writings, tells us exactly when Atlantis sank, which was 11,600 years ago. But he doesn't tell us much about about these people. So, but in that 2 sentences that I just told you, it says that a god, okay, a god, what? Do we believe in gods, supernatural gods? I don't. I believe that Poseidon was an ancient astronaut coming from a, a planet in our solar system.
Anunnaki, like you said in another interview.
Yeah. And he falls in love with a woman who can't be much more, she's Neolithic, 12th, an Earth human of 12,000 years ago would be a tribal person. So I ask myself, why, of all these people, did an ancient astronaut with fantastical ultra technology, good enough to get him to Earth and eventually build this city, why did he fall in love with not a cave woman, because it was 12,000 years ago. They were humans by this time. Why did he fall in love with her? And how in the hell did they have 5 sets of twin sons? That is genomically close to impossible. And yet it is Plato giving us these facts that are really important facts. I mean, most people skim over them. I, being the kind of writer that I am and researcher that I am, don't skim over them. I basically wrote a 2,000-page saga, The Gods of Atlantis, based on that. And of course, the rest of Plato's writings about Atlantis and the physical makeup and the society.
So
It is
what sort of transportation do they use? What sort of communication in your book?
oh well, there are 2 separate societies. One is is Atlantos, which is it's such a complex story, but Poseidon comes here, he falls in love with Earth as it is, which is a pristine place, falls in love with the girl. Um, he sees the humans that are on Earth at that time, and he decides, I am not going to screw this up with my technology. I know what technology can do to a society. He comes from, are you familiar with Planet Nine or Planet X?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Zechariah Sitchin um, talked about it many years ago, but which it's a planet in our solar system. It goes around our sun, except that its orbit is not within the 9 or the 8 planets that we know of now. Its orbit is really long and elliptical, and its orbit is anywhere between 3,600 years to make one orbit, so said Zechariah Sitchin, or they just discovered that this planet is real. It's called, and they found it at Caltech. A couple of guys, astronomers there, discovered it. It is now in the news all the time. They call it Planet Nine because, of course, Pluto is no longer allowed to be a planet. And that is where I placed the society that this astronaut Poseidon and his brother Athens and a geneticist Talia. That's the planet that they come from, and they only are able to visit Earth and Mars and the inner planets of the sun when their planet, which is a dead planet because its orbit is, it goes so far out of space, there's no light, there's no sun. Um, they they come to Earth at certain times to do experiments on the human population of Earth, which is a paradise. And one of the things that Plato says, one of the most important things, is that, and this is at the very end of one of the 2 of his dialogues in which he talks about Atlantis. He says that Atlantis went to war with Athens. This because back then there was a prehistoric city of Athens, and that was his brother's city. And that, you asked before, what was the kind of transportation they used? That was a totally high-tech society. And those 2 mindsets and the 2 brothers come into conflict, and Athens is going crazy, and it is after it's them that go to war. It's not the city of Atlantis going to war with the city of Athens. It's two brothers going to war with each other. And right after that, according to Plato, is when the cataclysm happens and takes out everything. Takes out Athens, swallowed in an earthquake, and takes out Atlantis, which is what everybody knows is disappears under the sea in great waves. So I have managed to write 2,000 pages on it, and it's sort of been my life's work. And the reason that I am writing about it is that, and this just irony of it is that I'm writing a book about the end of the world at a time that I believe today, I think we're looking at the end of the world. And it's because of human hubris and violence and madness. And this is exactly what Plato said about the reason that Atlantis went down and the world was destroyed and the great flood happened. And strangely enough, and this is something I get from my friend Graham Hancock, he's sort
Yeah, who
of
wrote a rave review of
oh yeah, but he has written all the books that he writes are about this ancient civilization,
Yeah.
this lost civilization. And I was having dinner with him one night while he was on his book tour for Magicians of the Gods. That was in 2016, right? Yeah, 2016. And he and I said to him, my novel is a fictionalized version of your nonfiction books, because especially Magicians of the Gods, that what that meant was when the world ended back then, at the Great Flood, which happened in geological terms 11,600 years ago, which is what sparked his imagination and mine, that Plato said that Atlantis sank at the exact time geologically that the last ice age finished. There was this warm pulse and all the glaciers and the everything melted, and that's why everything flooded. But I said to him, my book is a fictional version
right.
of yours, because what I was meaning to say is because what he talks about is the survivors of Atlantis. Well, they spread out over the world and in places like South America, Egypt, everywhere. They managed to get everywhere, and they repopulated the world, and they brought to the world what had been the cultures and the learning. So they brought agriculture and mathematics and astronomy and different kinds of arts, architecture, brought those everywhere. And so my book at the end has survivors. These are the characters that I have developed over, 2,000 pages. And so there's a commonality. He believes that there was this ancient global civilization,
hmm
advanced global civilization, and there were survivors. And so mine is a longer version of that
Yeah,
sentence.
flesh on the bones.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny these days. All we seem to be seeing in books and TV shows and movies are dystopian novels.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it's by definition, but every one of them that I've ever seen take place either in the future or right now, like Don't
Hmm.
Look Up, right?
Yeah.
All dystopian novels. This is the only dystopian novel that I've ever seen or heard of that takes place 12,000 years ago.
Because the
It's
history repeats or history rhymes, as I've heard.
exactly, it repeats itself.
Have
Absolutely.
you also heard of the Lemuria, the civilization of
Oh,
Lemuria?
yeah, but I've been so busy with Atlantis, I haven't been. However, interestingly, and this was something that I've been so influenced by Graham and
Mm,
his writings ever since Fingerprints of the Gods, which was like 1995. And I've been really writing this in one way or another since then. I only started physically writing it in 2000, but I've been into all of this for so long. Um,
because you were into UFOs before, no?
oh yeah.
Since a young age.
Uh-huh. Um, Gosh, what was I gonna say? Okay. I just lost my train of thought. It had to do with something that Graham said. Anyway,
Because I think he thought Lemuria was the Madagascar.
right. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. Thank you. Yeah. I at the time that we were talking the most about this, and he read book one, he believed that Atlantis was where Indonesia is now,
Hmm.
south of what is the Southeast Asian, peninsula, but that it went way farther down to
Mm,
be as far as Java. Now what we have is Indonesia, Java, all these islands in that area right below Thailand and,
hmm.
that group of countries. And and they had found a pyramid but made of basalt, I believe, in Java, that was 22,000 years old. And so at that point, and I know Graham, he keeps up with all the newest research about
Hmm.
where Atlantis is. At that point, he believed it was Southeast Asia,
Mm. Not the
uh,
Atlantic.
not the Atlantic, no. And I was at a point in writing that I had to decide where the hell this place was.
Yeah. It's pretty important in a saga like that.
Yeah. And so I thought that's a good place. And so I set it there. When it was still a small continent.
Mm,
Um, and then in 11,600 years ago, when that second pulse came, that warm pulse and everything flooded, it it cut it it just drowned everything that was Atlantis except a few little islands, and that's what we have today.
okay.
Yeah. Um, but I'd say that as much as the book is a dystopian novel, it is also an intimate portrait of the gods, of the dynasty of the gods. You know, I couldn't do what I do without
Mm.
the writers, history
Historians, yeah.
writers, and researchers. I couldn't do it. But none of them ever write about the actual people. And there had to have been actual individuals who ran Atlantis, who went to war with Athens, who fell in love with an Earth girl. And that's what I have always done as a writer. I write really intimate portraits of relationships and individuals. And how
Well,
they
it brings it to life. That's what people are interested in. The
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, my Secret Diary of Anne Boleyn was my debut novel, and
Mhm,
to date, my most successful novel. Um, but that got into the relationship with Henry VIII, and with her daughter, who um, was 2.5 when Anne was beheaded. Um, it got into that relationship, that mother-daughter relationship, and of course, Anne's relationship with Henry, in a way that nobody had ever done it before, and I think that's why it was successful, but, um, I can't even tell you how many hundreds or thousands of books, TV shows, movies there have been that have taken Atlantis as their title, or.
mhm.
Not one of them has been based on Plato. Yet he's the guy. He's the only guy who wrote about it. I don't know.
Have you read any of the Indian literatures, the Sanskrits? Because there's the Ramayana, the
uh,
Upanishads,
part,
very ancient. I
part
think probably the oldest books we have.
yes, I know them well. My husband is a yoga master. He's
Oh,
a
really?
senior yogis in America. He was one of those who started the yoga movement in Los Angeles
Oh,
in
what's
the
his name?
'80s, Max Thomas.
Okay.
Max Thomas, and, so I'm very even though I haven't done the reading,
Hmm.
I'm quite aware, and of course, the stuff that interests me, I'll read about in parts, the Vimanas,
Hmm.
which were the um, spaceships, I suppose,
Yep.
of the Indian ancients, and, yeah, and I I kind of borrow from all of the ancient traditions, well, we called our dog Shiva, we had a dog called her Shiva, um, and Cleota, who is the love of Poseidon's life and becomes an she's also asked me about psilocybin mushrooms, but her wolf dog companion is also named Shiva.
Mm.
So, and I've taken because this Atlantis was a global culture. It doesn't just take place in Atlantis, but there is Athens, which is on the Mediterranean, of course, and one of the 10 sons uh, develops the culture of the Nile Valley and builds the Sphinx and the pyramids. And so I just take all of my great, most favorite mysteries of the universe, and I've put them all together into this massive saga.
Mm. Because also they mention in the Ramayana the Indra's dart and the Brahma weapon, and they're basically nuclear weapons that the
Mm,
civilization of Atlantis and Lemuria developed. So they were very advanced.
mhm. Well, interestingly enough, the technology, which I call technos, that comes from the home planet, which I call Teres, that's the one with that long orbit,
Hmm.
um, is not nuclear. It is based upon um, vibrational modulation. It's called Phaetron Technos,
Hmm.
and it can do pretty much anything. It creates, destroys, levitates, cloaks, heals. It does everything,
That's how
and
the
it
UFOs can move through the sky. Then is it? There?
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. It's anti gravity. It's an all purpose technology, and one of the main thrusts of and plots of the whole thing is that the civilization of Terry's must live under energy domes because everything else outside of them is dead. And and they have developed this technos, and that's what allows them to do space travel, and it allows them, for example, Poseidon doesn't want to break the backs of, you know, the the native peoples that he gathers together for his civilization. So to dig those 100-foot deep, 100-foot wide canals, he uses his technology to do
Mm.
that. So that but he uses it so sparingly, and it becomes one of the great conflicts of the book because he has these 10 sons, and many of them want his technology. They want to
Mm.
use it for their own purposes. They want to build the pyramid. They want to fly
As you
around.
do, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And Poseidon and his wife, who is a nature woman, she is a daughter of the great mother, um, doesn't want this to happen. And
Mm.
so many of the conflicts and betrayals that happen in this happen around the subject of should I give them technos? Should I not give them technos?
Mm.
And almost everything happens because of that. Oh, and the reason that they come to the inner planets in the first place, well, they've been doing it for for millions of years, basically, is to take the next, on Earth, is to take the next step
Yeah.
in, human evolution with, genetic manipulation. But the real reason they come to the inner planets is they have run out, or they're running out of the mineral that runs their vibrational technos. And they have found a whole lot of it on Mars. So in the beginning, Poseidon comes to Earth and he gets his whole deal started.
Hmm.
And his brother Athens goes to Mars with 5,000 colonists and starts mining this ore. And
Mm.
there's a catastrophe there. And, by book 3, they have to emigrate to Earth. And that's when the real problems
Mm.
start between the two brothers.
What is interesting with books as yours, because they do expand people's thinking, because to get people to believe in Atlantis when it's just cold facts is a bit hard. But with your book, kind of flesh it out, even though some of the facts from my own experience, maybe I could just share a few
Yeah.
from my yogic background, in that one of the key concepts is that life exists at different frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
So all the other planets are inhabited, but so if we go to Mars, we don't see anyone, but their life exists there. It's fully populated, but at a different dimension, a different realm.
Well, that's so interesting. You should say that. That's one of the other big things, big themes is creatures from another dimension
Mm.
who start interacting with one of our main characters. And it's terrifying because they are basically the Greys.
Hmm.
What who knows how many different varieties there are, but they are the Greys, and they are able to communicate. It's Athens, Poseidon's brother, who gets hit with these mind melds that he didn't want to have anything to do with, and they plague him throughout the book. It starts in the first book, and it's one of the causes of him going mad and destroying the Earth. So, alternate dimensions is a theme in the book.
Oh, there
And
is in
the
there.
other is psychedelics, because Cleota, the reason that she's the most developed woman, and the reason that this highly intelligent and technologically advanced geologist, scientist, astronaut can fall in love with somebody is because she's so advanced. So the reason she's so advanced is that she's a mushroom shaman. She has been eating mushrooms since she was a young girl.
Okay.
And she's the only one of her tribe, but she's become their medicine woman. Nobody understands why she's so smart, but this is her thing. And of course, she shares her knowledge of some of the most basic earth intelligence, vegetable intelligence with Poseidon. And it's the melding of the ultra advanced vibral technology with vegetable intelligence, the psychedelics,
Mm.
that makes this fabulous society.
Expansion of consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and it's another thing that Graham and I discovered we had in common was this, our experiences with
Personal
incest.
experiences.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's all my favorite things. It's all my favorite things.
I could see why you say it's your magnum
Magnum.
opus.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're all finished, and now I am in the process of publishing them all. I decided I did not want a publisher. All my other books have been done by the big publishers, and no way did I want anybody telling me what to do, how many pages I needed to cut because the book was too long. Excuse me? I don't think so. Um, and so I am also publishing all 5 of them independently at the same time.
Oh wow. That's like your Netflix drop in the series.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. I'm doing we've all done binge watching. This is going to be binge reading. If you want to go on to book 2, 3, 4 and because it's only one story.
Mm-hmm.
Publishers, agents, they all say, "Oh, this book has to be a standalone book." This is not a standalone book. I don't even want you to read book 1 unless you plan to get to the end, because this is the story of Atlantis and the thing that everybody knows about Atlantis. And it's the only thing I think that like 99% of the population knows is that Atlantis sank beneath the waves.
Yeah.
So why start a story about Atlantis unless you're going to find out why it sank beneath the waves?
And do you know when it started? What year?
Which when like Poseidon came to
Yeah.
About 12,000 years ago. About I don't know if you know anything about the younger Driest cataclysm, or the earth changes. There is evidence now that 12,800 years ago there was a really great flood,
Okay.
and it changed, and there
In the
had
Bible, in all the big books, and all that.
well, actually, we think that one happened 11,600, but 12,800, everything changed. There was an ice sheet that covered the entire top of the world down through the middle of America, covered completely Siberia. It was huge, and it was 2 miles deep. and something happened, and it is Graham's belief, and Randall Carlson, I don't know if you follow him, he believes that it was a comet that struck the ice sheet in the northwest of America and other places, but the biggest part happened there. And a comet the size of Mount Everest, right?
Hmm.
Hit the ice sheet and melted the hell out of it. And that's what caused that was the beginning of what geologists call the Younger Dryas period.
Okay.
11,600 years ago. So that's 1,200 years between the first and the second event. They don't know what happened
Hmm.
at what caused the melting of so much and the earth changes. They don't know. They just know it happened because it was the end of the last ice age.
Mm.
So I have started my story about 1,000 years after the first big melt.
Okay.
And then it lasts really for only about 200 years because I need the story to end
Yeah, yeah.
to go according to Plato.
Let me share some of the yogic timings with you. Maybe you
Please.
can, as a different perspective, is that because all the planets are living beings, millions of lives more evolved than us. They're the merging of consciousness of many, many, many masters. And so we destroyed the planet Maldek, which is now the asteroid belt. We blew it up. And then we came here as Maldek Man about 18 million years ago.
Huh?
Then we were about 100 to 200,000 years on the lower and higher astral realms.
Right.
And then about 13.1 million years within the civilization of Lemuria. And then it was about 1 million years in ruins after Lemuria destruction, because when the Earth...
What destroyed Lemuria?
The Earth turns on its axis.
Oh,
Within a matter of... it can do it in under an hour, I think. That's how there's 4-mile high tidal waves, and it's just... So because they were going to nuclear, they were probing the atom again, and so that's why there is coal underneath the North and South Pole. Yeah, but yeah.
Wow.
So it's done that at least twice. That also did that at the end of... So that was about 1,000 years in ruins, because we had to go back to the basics to come up again. So we had to evolve again.
There were survivors from Lemuria.
I think. Well, they were. Yeah, I think there were survivors. Yeah, but it must have been pretty decimated. I mean, if there's 4-mile high waves going... Yeah.
I know.
And so there was 3.5 million years within the civilization of Atlantis. Then Atlantis did the same thing. They went to nuclear, and then the Earth turned again. And there was 800,000 years of ruins after the destruction of Atlantis. And then we had to, crawl out the swamps again. And then the new age of Kali Yoga started about 5,000 years ago. And that's when Sri Krishna came. And so that's the yogic perspective.
I did not know any of that.
There you go. Ah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But those are really long periods. There is some very interesting information about we call it kind of forbidden history. What's his name? There's a man who, oh gosh, what's his name? He writes about the discoveries of, for example, a bracelet made of silver found in a lump of coal, found inside a lump of coal.
Wow.
And from under the, shit like that, which supports what you're talking about, that the time frames are beyond our conception. I think I did mine at these my time frame because I could believe it. It was within my, we all have our levels of what
Comprehension, yeah.
yes, and what can feel real,
Mm.
and I did it, and that's why I did not make, the Teresians or the home planet of the god, the brothers Ra, because it's Athens Ra and Poseidon Ra. I I didn't make it from another galaxy. I didn't make it from another star system. I made it from our own star system so that I could imagine that this could all be real. It's
Yeah.
like it's in some ways, it's like what I did with Jane, the Woman Who Loved Tarzan. I based that all in science that I could understand. There was nothing magical about Tarzan, and then Jane and the world that they lived in. There in the gods of Atlantis, it's all based in what I consider science and psychic and other dimensions, but it's all believable to this particular mind.
Right.
And um and I did that with the time frame as well. But I don't disbelieve what you're saying. I absolutely believe that
Uh,
we could go back way farther
yeah.
than, than we do. Yeah.
Uh,
Um anyway, are you familiar with Terence McKenna?
yes. Yep.
He was one of my research gods. And, the the book of his that I read, I listened to all of his, lectures, which were amazing, but the book that really, gelled with what I was doing, um, called Food of the Gods, was about how the eating of mushrooms helped propel our our consciousness
Hmm.
forward. We were, um, and we don't know how far back it goes, but probably I think he says as soon as the climate changed and the great apes came down from the trees and there was grassland and there was ungulates, like hooved creatures,
Hmm.
that started to leave their droppings on the grasslands. And then the apes came down from the trees and they were looking for food and they found mushrooms in the, poop of these, these herds, started eating them, not knowing what it was. And this took the evolution of human consciousness in leaps and bounds, because you must know that there are these unexplained leaps in our evolution that, we're going along like, monkeys. And suddenly we're building pyramids. That that doesn't make any sense, the chronology of history. So I've been trying to put that right. And anyway, then um the more they ate psychedelics, and there are other forms, of course, too. There's ayahuasca, and
Yeah.
how do people figure out to mix this root vine and this plant, and get ayahuasca? But whatever it took, this was a major cause of human evolution,
Mm.
of consciousness.
Did you ever get to meet Terence McKenna?
I didn't. I think Max met him at a lecture, but I never got to meet him. And then, of course, he died in 2000. Uh, but his brother is still doing the work, Dennis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, one other thing I wanted to say, to give you an idea of what this book is, one of the themes is it's the first love story on Earth. Everything comes from it. It predates Adam and Eve by 8,000 years.
Ah.
But it's what I believe is the true generation of human civilization, and how we went from being tribal people to being people who could build a pyramid.
Mm.
Um, Look at that 22,000-year-old pyramid in Indonesia. Um, we still think people were living in caves 22,000 years ago.
Yeah, they do much more than that.
Right.
What a mental exercise to reimagine all of that. It's
Ah,
super impressive. I mean, how long did it take you to write the whole book?
well, I wrote the first draft of the book in the year 2000 when we
Hmm.
moved here. And here's a funny fact. We it is just a shadow of what it became. But I did try to sell it via my New York agents. And it was right at the beginning of when you could push a button on your computer and send a manuscript out. We used to send manuscripts out, this thick, and, and get them by mail or messenger. This is the first time they press a button and it goes out to, in this case, it went out to a lot of Hollywood people and a lot of, and all the big publishers. And you know what time they pressed the button in New York? It was 8:45 on September 11th, 2001,
Mm.
just when the planes were hitting the Trade Center. And so the submission of what was then called just Atlantos um, was lost in
Like Atlantis.
like, yes. And when publishers finally got back to work, which was months later, it just destroyed
Mhm.
everything. It was rejected by everybody. And many of the rejection letters in those days, I got actual letters, in the mail.
Ah,
Rejection letters mostly said, sorry, we can't deal with something that apocalyptic right now. We're just, we don't want
mm.
to talk about it. But it's a good thing because then my career as a historical novelist really took flight, and I did, a bunch more books. I had 2, 3, 8 other 8 other 9 other 8 other novels. And, but this book never left me. And, as soon as Jane came out in 2012, I went back to work full time, and I expanded it from a 515-page book into a 2,000-page book. So it's just one book. It just, I can't expect people to, sit there reading even on a Kindle. So I broke it up into
Okay.
5 books.
And is that it? Is that Is that your last book?
No, I'm in the middle of writing with my 40 I was a screenwriter first, for about 15 years before I started writing novels, and, I've been best girlfriends and writing partner with a woman named Billy Morton, who now lives in Australia. She did live in California for many years. And we are writing, a novel based on my mother's life, and, it takes place in the summer of 1939 in the Catskills, the Borscht Belt. I call it a Jewish, Yaya sisterhood. It's about three girls and their coming of age in the Borscht Belt, uh, of New York, New York
Yeah,
State.
that's back to feet back on the ground kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then, of course, I many of my other projects, but one in particular, called Rebel Queen, which is about, I've mentioned that, Irish she was the Irish Braveheart,
Mm.
She's known as the Pirate Queen, but that's the least of her accomplishments. She was the mother of all the rebellions in Ireland. I mean, all the all the rebellions in Ireland, and she was the rival of your Elizabeth the first, and for a lifetime, for 30 years, they were at each other's throats because Elizabeth was decimating Ireland. She killed, in the end, she killed about half the population of Ireland, burned down their forests. And this was a woman who she had the biggest fleet in Ireland. And in 1593, she sailed her pirate ship up the Thames, parked it at the Greenwich Palace Quay, and marched in. This is in the middle of the Irish Rebellion. She could have been hanged as a traitor. And she walked in, and speaking Latin, because she was a smart woman, she made 3 huge demands on Elizabeth the First, who was already a scary, woman. And she said, "I want my son, who is in one of your prisons in Ireland. I want him released. I want to get out of my country a brutal military man. I want him gone from Ireland. And since you destroyed my ability to make money, I was a rich woman. You've destroyed that. I want a pension from you." So that's what she said to Elizabeth.
She got
And
it.
Elizabeth acquiesced to all her demands. And based on that, I decided I gotta know why Elizabeth said yes to this woman. So
Oof.
I started doing my research, and I wrote a book called The Wild Irish. And that was my 4th in my Elizabethan quartet. And now I'm trying to, I've put together a limited series based on that. And the second of my Elizabethan quartet, called The Queen's Bastard, about Elizabeth's illegitimate son with Robin Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. I don't know if you know that part of history, but anyway, there was a man who had a very good claim to that. Most people don't believe it, but I do, and I wrote a book. And those 2 books I've melded into what would be a limited series. So I'm trying to sell that, and almost every one of my books would be a wonderful, either movie.
Cinematic. Yeah. You should write the screenplay.
Well,
Yeah.
I started as a screenwriter, so one thing that's always talked about with my books is how cinematic they are.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
you've inspired me. I'm gonna have to, if I find the time for your magnum opus, then I will.
I hope you do. I hope you
Yeah.
do. I hope to have all 5 books. And, the other thing, I just produced and directed the audio book for Poseidon in Love. Uh, um, uh, done, performed, I don't even say narrated, by the most wonderful British actress, Suzanne Crowley, who has done 4 of my other audiobooks. And we've been working at probably the best audio book studio, at least in America, maybe the world, Dion Audiobooks. And that is about to be finished. And I hope to have everything, 5 books and the 1 audiobook, published maybe by the end of February.
Okay. So we're expecting another calamity around then.
Yeah. And I hope I find time for naps. I'm 74, and everybody looks at me like, What are you doing?
Yeah.
I just wake up in the morning, hit the ground running, and I just got so much on my plate. But it's fun. It keeps me on my toes.
74 years young.
That's me. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's been a real pleasure, Robin. Thanks so much for taking the
Oh,
time to
it's a
chat.
pleasure to talk to you too.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My
It's the
pleasure.
first time I've talked about this. I have.
Oh, an exclusive.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks very much. I'll send you a link when it's live.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. All right.
Bye, Robin. Bye-bye.